Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at a question that I've had a few different times, and that is how do you pick a sit and star? Now for those of you who are not familiar with what a sit and star is it basically gives you the ability to, in an instrument flight plan, leave an area, kind of especially like an airport, or get lined up for particular approaches. So the SID is the instrument departure, the star is the terminal arrival, if you want to think about it another way. The other thing you're going to hear them called is DPs, departure procedures, depending kind of on what the nomenclature of your particular equipment is. So what we're going to do today is we're going to see kind of how a couple different ways that we can pick the one that we can use, especially if we're filing for like VATSIM or something like that. So let's go ahead and create ourselves a flight today. I'm going to go basically keep it real simple here. We're going to go from Brainerd, actually, that's a bit of a flight. We'll go from Bradley all the way down to BWI, which is pretty good because I don't actually have to fly the darn thing. So what I'm going to do is go over here. I'm just going to go ahead and type in a couple waypoints, keep it super duper simple here. We're going to go KBDL. We're going to go, let's do this one, and then we'll go ahead and say KBWI. Keep it simple. We're going to call this an IFR flight, and we're going to go ahead and say read flight here, read route description. It identifies it pretty well. Yeah, not too bad. Like I said, super duper simple here. This is not a real IFR flight plan. Normally we'd be doing this against jetways, but there are no jetways here, so I'm not stressing about it. Like I said, keep it simple. So what I would do then is I come up here to my starting point, right click on it. You'd see show departure procedures for KBDL. I'd hit that, and then it would give me a nice little list of these different procedures. Now what you would do is you come in here and you find what runway we're using. So if I come in here to Bradley today, we know the wind is coming predominantly out of the north. We have very, very, very strong winds today, especially gusty winds. So we're going to pick runway 6 there, which means I have a choice between the Bradley 2 and the Coastal 6. Now a few of you are probably saying, well, wait a minute, that's not up to date. Yeah, it's not up to date. As a matter of fact, if you go to AirNav here, you'll notice that our current information here, we have the Coastal 9 departure, but the Bradley 6 has remained the Bradley 6. You can see I'm Bradley 2 here to give you an idea of how out of date my navigational data is. Now you're saying, wait a minute, my navigational data is out of date. It's not a problem. In the real world, it's a big problem. In the simulator, it's less of a problem. And there are good products out there. I think Navigraph is one that can actually provide you with those up-to-date details should you need them. But for our purposes, I'm not going to stress about it. So anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to pick one of these two procedures. I've got the Bradley 2 and I've of course got the 6. Now if you open up these little arrows here, this is the little nav map, by the way, you can see that when I use, whoa, I don't want to use that one, I'll use this one. You'll notice that when I use the Bradley 2, it basically makes me go up a little bit, and then we have a vector. And then if I go to this one, it makes us go down, and we're going to go here, and we're going to go here, and then we're going to go here, and then we're going to go over here, and it's going to have a bunch of constraints and altitude associated with it. Now, we look at those two going, why on earth would you take the Coastal 9? Well, the reason you take the Coastal 9 in the real world is because that's the one they're using that particular day. The other advantage to it, of course, is it's going to dodge this bullet that is the New York traffic, because it's basically going to make you go skirt around it. The other option with typical Connecticut flight plans is they take you out to New York, especially Pauling, and they go straight back down from there, kind of in the general direction of wherever you need to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and use this one. So I'm just going to right click on it and go ahead and say insert into flight plan. And now you can see it automatically updates this nice and quickly with all the new changes in our little flight here. So it's looking pretty good. I'm actually going to adjust, I'm not going to adjust that because it's going to get mad at me. It thinks I'm flying the Skylane, which I'm definitely not flying the Skylane, but I'm not going to take a couple minutes to go put something new in here to kind of fix that up. Don't worry about it. So now, of course, what I would normally do is after I grab which one I'm going to use, and you can see how it lines up the runway nicely, is I like to go take a quick peek at it. So let's go hit up the Coastal 9 here, about page 2. This is usually the one where it's going to give you a description of what you need to do. Take off runway 6, expect radar vectors, start for VOR, then from there, proceed along these, proceed up. We can see exactly what that looks like visually, or if we prefer, we can come down here and open this sucker up, and we can actually see what it looks like more conventionally here. Man, this is a lot simpler than it used to be. So we take off, we get radar vectors down to Hartford, and we basically proceed down all of these different components to our particular point. Now, one of the nice things about these is a lot of times the last point on them is the head of some kind of airway. So, if we were to come down here and, turn on airways and everything like that, we'll turn on jetways real quickly here. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll get lucky, and let's try Victor and see if we get a little more lucky here. Yeah, perfect. You'll see that we had the Victor 46 airway right here. It's hard to see, but that's what this line is right here. And we can actually jump on that and start riding that directly to our destination, depending on what our flight is actually going to entail. So it's just valuable to kind of be able to pick that one that's going to get you lined up with where you need to go. Now, where things get a little more difficult is going to be on the receiving end. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to go ahead and I'll pop back over here. We'll go to AirNav. We'll type in KBWI, And we're going to go ahead and get blasted here. So now we're going to be interested in arrival procedures. The magic word was STAR, Standard Terminal Arrivals. And you can see we have a bunch to pick from. We have the Anthem, we have the MIDI, we have the Raven 6, we have the Trish 3, and we have the Westminster 7. Now there's a lot to pick from. And if you take a look at what actual instrument approach procedures there are, wow, there's a lot here. So knowing what's going to be used that day is going to basically set us up. So let's go back down to BWI. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go ahead and say show arrival procedures. Ooh boy, we have a few to pick from. So what I like to do is I like to pick the actual approach and then go back and pick the star. So let's go ahead and say, let's see the runway today. Oh wow, they're getting blasted too. Runway 28 looks pretty good to me. So we have a couple different choices. ILS is always my favorite. It's simple, it works. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and go ahead and add that to my flight plan. Now, did you see what happened? It basically bent this a little bit so that we could come down here. Now, in the real world, if you take a look here, I need to be at 2,000 feet when I hit Hertz. Now, this is a very complicated airspace, especially in the United States. So you're never just going to go direct to Hertz and then take a right and land the plane. We'd have to follow one of those stars that we saw on the other page. So the good news is, now that we know what runway we're using, it narrows down what star we can use. So let's see what we got here. We have star all. Click on that one. Oh boy, that's in the middle of Pennsylvania. Not really interested in that very much. Let's see what else we have. We have Star 28. This is Anthem 3. Yuck. MIDI 2. It's coming from the south. Raven 6. Ew. Let's see. We have Ripken 2. Nah. Trish 3. There we go. So you can see here the Trish 3 star starts at about 8,900 feet. It's parked right up here, which is actually not far away from that last point. So I'm just going to go ahead and right click and go ahead and insert that directly into my flight plan here. So now you can see we built a complete flight plan. We have our takeoff point. We have our initial point again in the real world. Like I said, you'd be having Victor Airways the whole way down. We hit this particular one here. Like I said, it's the Trish 3, and the initial point's going to be Trish. So when we go to dial this into the FMS later, we know which one we're going to pick. We're going to come down here. We got fins, we got grams, and look at this. Grams, yeah, it takes us, it's kind of like perpendicular, this little arc over the river here, but not the river, the bay. I used to live down there. So we're going to come right around here, line up with Hertz at 2,000 feet. There's our ILS feather. Down we go. And now we have ourselves an awesome complete flight plan ready to rock. Now, of course, what I would also do is you go back over here. You go grab the one that we just added to our plan here. Let's see here. We have the Terps. Terps used to be the one that I always used. The Swan 3, you can come in here. You can open it up and sort of figure out all these. I've done videos on departure and arrival procedures before, so I'm not going to get too carried away with what actually gets involved with these. But one of the things you always want to double check is even if you're not going to sit here and cram this thing and you're just going to let the FMS do all the work for you, double check at the bottom that it doesn't say something like turbojet only or small propeller plane only, and double check to make sure the altitudes actually make sense. For example, if I can see here, if we're starting at the Capco, which is way, let me rotate this so I don't hurt everybody's necks. If we're starting way out here at Capco, which is way far to the east here, you can see how many different crazy altitudes we're going to have to be transferring from and all these strange angles to make this possible. And it also gives us a bunch of heads up. There it is. So make sure you double check that as well. Now, you're probably saying, well, that was a lot of work, and maybe you don't have this tool at your disposal. Nah. And also, what happens when you come up here and you do one of these, when you do the calculated flight plan mode? You come in here, you want to do 33,000 feet. It's pretty standard. And go ahead and adjust. It's going to do that for me. Let's see. We want to do all airways. You go ahead and press the calculate button. It sits there. Your computer makes a lot of noise, and you end up with a flight that looks a little bit like this, which that's not bad. I mean, it's a little, in my opinion, it's a little chaotic. I think you could probably be a little more accurate, but you can see that it does not damage all the hard work that we did as far as approach procedures goes. Now, what do you want to do if you want to do this a little easier? Well, one of the tools I've looked at before is this great thing called simbrief. Costs nothing. One thing you got to watch out for is the navigational data. They're not going to give you all the navigation data. This is, let's see here, 21. Okay, this is 2021 March. So this is massively out of date data, but you could go ahead and update it if you needed to do so. But watch this. Let's say we want to create the exact same flight we just created a few minutes ago. We'll say new flight. It's going to take just a few moments to kind of get everything all squared away here. Let's see, we're at Delta. We're flight 1. Let's see, we're leaving BWL. Let's BWI. Give it a second to kind of crunch. Airframe. We're just going to assume that we're flying an Airbus A310 here. Looks pretty good to me. I'm not going to worry about this. I'm not going to worry about this. It gives you a recommended route. A recommended route's fine. I like that. So I'm going to leave that. You can see it actually takes us out here into that part of Connecticut. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the tippy top. I'm going to go ahead and press the generate flight button. Keep in mind, I did do things like my cost index. I didn't set up my weights and all that. It does not matter. But the important thing is, if you come in here, let me zoom in nice and big so everybody can see it. You can see they automatically calculated what the most logical route was. So you can actually see they want us to take the Trish 3 arrival, and they want us to take it via Nuggy. But the interesting thing is, and this is one of those things you kind of got to watch out for when you try to copy paste this, is you notice that it wants me to go direct veers. It's not actually going to do that craziness that I had before. And then it goes direct polling. So realistically, this is the Bradley 2. Like, remember that coastal approach, or not the coastal, not the opposite of the coastal approach, that vectored one. And the cool thing is, if I come in here and press Control C, come over here, I'll go ahead and create a new flight plan, Control A, Control V. You got to take the DCTs out, otherwise it's going to think it's a director control tower. Go ahead and say read from route description. It's going to get a little mad. It needs a departure airport. It doesn't find it. So what I'll do is I'll just come to the front, okay, BDL. Yeah, it looks pretty good right there. Go ahead and read it. It's going to require destination, no problem. All right, it's going to tell me you could not find, ignoring speed and altitude at mix. And it's also having trouble finding Bixby there because, again, remember how out of date my flight plan is? But if I hit create, hit no, you'll see that it gives me almost the exact same flight plan we had a few minutes ago, with the exception of this little kind of fun little bit that it added there. So you can see just how useful this tool is. Like I said, it's kind of a neat tool, and it does a lot of those calculations for you. And there's one more thing on this one I'll share before we kind of sneak out for today here. If you go down here, you'll notice it actually recommends runways too. So for some reason, it's recommending 24, which I must have out-of-date wind information too. And of course, it's recommending BWI 2A, which I get that. That makes sense to me. So again, a couple of things we took a look at is picking your SID and your STAR, which is your departure procedure and arrival procedure, respectively. The important thing is, if you're in a flight sim environment, you have a lot of control over this. But don't be surprised if you're on VATSIM, if you request a specific STAR when you go to File, and they give you something completely unrelated, or DP, I should say. They're not called STARs, they're departure procedures. If you ask for a specific departure procedure, don't be surprised if they give you something different. So be ready to run back to whatever navigational tool you're using and change it. But other than that, enjoy.